My evil, narcissistic sister tried to seduce my fiancé just days before our wedding in a cruel attempt to break us up, but her twisted plan backfired when she got caught red-handed on camera, leading to her public disgrace and our parents finally disowning her. This narrative centers on my older sister, Dove, who is 29. She seemed to resent my very presence, apparently believing I led a life I hadn't earned. She's currently divorced and residing with my parents, unemployed, having abandoned her college education for a wealthy boyfriend who ultimately ended their marriage once her true nature became apparent. Our relationship throughout childhood was consistently strained. She was always the attractive and intelligent one, somewhat self-absorbed. My parents frequently lauded her and took her side, which often left me feeling inadequate. People would often praise her appearance while I was simply me. It was hurtful, you know. She would exploit this dynamic to manipulate me, suggesting that no one truly cared for me. Those early jabs left me profoundly insecure. My parents consistently overlooked my feelings and never supported me because she invariably met their expectations. Consequently, I began to distance myself from them during my childhood and teenage years. She often had friends visiting our home when our parents were at work. Her friends would also disrupt my room, and on one occasion they even damaged my project, nearly causing me to fail. I intended to inform my mother about it, but Dove blackmailed me, threatening to share unflattering photos of me with my classmates. As a 14-year-old, I was genuinely terrified. She never accepted accountability for her actions, and reporting anything to my parents was futile, as they rarely paid attention anyway. She engaged in numerous behaviors that fostered a deep resentment within me. My mother never stood by me, though my father would occasionally challenge Dove. Once, she used my phone to send inappropriate pictures of me to my girls' group because I had complained to Dad about her. Then she deliberately spilled coffee on my prom dress and feigned innocence by crying and claiming it was an accident. After that, I stopped confiding in him. I couldn't comprehend the depth of her animosity towards me. Later, I came to understand that she was a narcissist, and her behavior had nothing to do with me personally. She was a significant warning sign in her romantic relationships, and literally deceived every man she dated. I reluctantly admit she was also a gold digger. Her ex-husband remaining my friend speaks volumes. Essentially, she was quite malicious as a teenager, and her behavior as an adult remained unchanged, steadily deteriorating. I believe it was entirely my parents' fault for not attempting to discipline her. Nevertheless, circumstances began to improve after I finished school. I dedicated myself to my studies, gaining admission to my dream college. Following a few initial years of hardship, I secured my ideal job. It was there at an office conference that I encountered the love of my life, Atlas. He was intelligent, compassionate, and charming. We instantly connected, and within a few months we began dating. We frequently traveled for holidays, day trips, and hikes, which truly strengthened our bond. Atlas maintained a close relationship with his siblings, so he introduced me to his brothers and parents just a few months into our relationship. However, I took my time introducing him to my own parents. The primary reason for my delay was my sister, Dove, and her malevolent intentions. I constantly had a nagging suspicion that she would ruin everything. She had always received the best of everything as a child and teenager, and now that my life was progressing more favorably than hers, I was certain she wouldn't be able to tolerate it, especially concerning my relationship. However, I couldn't postpone it indefinitely. Atlas was becoming suspicious of my reluctance to introduce him to my family. So, after a year and a half of dating, I informed my father about him. He was pleased that I had found a man worthy of me and invited us for dinner. I was excited but equally anxious, knowing Dove was capable of going to extreme lengths to disrupt my life. Although Atlas was aware of my family dynamics, I still discussed Dove in detail with him. He remained calm about it, assuring me he would manage the situation. A few days after my call to Dad, I received a call from Dove. It was surprising because she had never contacted me before. She inquired about Atlas and when I would be visiting home. She seemed particularly keen on learning more about him. I presumed my mother must have told her I was dating someone and that we were quite serious. She was now attempting to befriend me, and I was fully aware of the true motive behind her sudden interest. I'm currently concerned about whether I should genuinely risk introducing Atlas to Dove, as I know her intentions are far from good. I'm also considering an alternative, perhaps inviting my parents to my place to introduce Atlas. Update 1. Thank you for all the insightful advice. A few of you inquire for more details about Dove, so here they are. It's true that my parents, particularly my father, altered their perspective on my sister after her divorce. She truly brought it upon herself. She was academically gifted, but as soon as she entered college, her entire focus shifted to her physique and appearance. Dove met a man named Jeremy, who was exceptionally wealthy, and began a relationship with him, abandoning her studies. I was preparing for my college entrance exams during my final year of school, and she repeatedly insisted I would never get into my dream college. But I did. For the first time, I received validation from my parents. They were overjoyed and proud of me, but my sister was envious when all the attention was directed towards me and not her. My parents organized a celebratory gathering with close family and friends to mark my accomplishment. She aimed to spoil my party and monopolize the attention, so she announced her engagement to Jeremy right then and there. You could clearly discern from Jeremy's expression that he was completely unaware of this, yet she succeeded in her mission of making that day revolve around her. Everyone became enthusiastic to learn about Jeremy, as he was supposedly wealthy, according to my sister. Dove would constantly display the expensive gifts he bought her and assert that I would never secure a rich husband because I was unattractive and undesirable. She consistently made me feel inferior. I countered by telling her that I wasn't a gold digger like her and could manage my own finances, while she could pursue the wealthy husband she desired. Overall, she was malevolent and the most self-centered individual I have ever encountered. A week later, Dove and Jeremy became engaged, and I had already departed for college and did not attend the engagement. During my college years, I had no communication with her. Returning home for holidays felt pleasant because Dove was living with Jeremy. Even during holidays, she would embark on vacations to exotic destinations with Jeremy. After a year of dating, they married in a lavish ceremony, with a majority of expenses covered by Jeremy. My father paid for the remaining costs as a courtesy, as she earned nothing. Their marriage lasted for a brief period, dissolving after 3 years. The reason, I later learned, was that Dove did not wish to have a baby, while Jeremy was eager to become a father. Although he told me he never coerced Dove, he resented how she never disclosed her preference beforehand and continuously avoided the conversation for 3 years. He also mentioned her drinking and partying habits, her flirting with men in bars, and that she married him solely for financial gain, lacking any emotional connection. I wondered if he was foolish not to recognize her motives for so long. Jeremy showed me videos where Dove would go out drinking with men, and they would touch her inappropriately, and she wouldn't deter them. It was fortunate for him that he extricated himself from her. My parents sided with Dove, attributing all the blame to Jeremy for pressuring her to have children, never acknowledging Dove's culpability. Following the divorce, Dove moved back in with my parents because she was not earning. She had dropped out of college to marry Jeremy, and now after 5 years, she lacked a college degree and work experience. She feigned being traumatized by the divorce, but in reality, she was content with her newfound freedom. Within a month of her divorce, she resumed her routine of clubbing and casual encounters. Her life seemed to revolve around weekly dates and discarding people. Her Instagram stories were sufficient to reveal her true activities. After 2 years in my career, I secured my dream job with excellent compensation, and my parents were ecstatic. I visited home after receiving the job offer, and my father was immensely proud of me. I couldn't have been happier. We were having dinner when Dove returned home, appearing partially intoxicated. My father was displeased at her sight and remarked that Dove should have pursued an education like me, and not ruined her life for Jeremy, highlighting my earnings and Dove's continued financial dependence on them. My mother asked Dad not to make such remarks. Hearing this, Dove became enraged, slamming the door. That's when my father realized how spoiled Dove truly was. He instructed my mother to reason with Dove, emphasizing that she needed to take her life seriously and become self-sufficient instead of exploiting them. I believe Dove overheard that because later she entered my room and told me that I could never be like her, regardless of how much money I earned. She then body-shamed me, pointing out my belly fat and chubby cheeks. I was utterly fed up with her. As a teenager, such comments would have devastated me, but now I simply don't care. I merely chuckled at her and stated that I genuinely did not wish to be like her, and that she clearly needed to adjust her demeanor. Oh my goodness, she unleashed her fury upon hearing this and demanded that I leave the house. I retorted that it was my parents' home, and she had no authority to dictate my actions. The following day, as I was preparing for my return, I noticed that 2 of my dresses were severely torn, clearly cut with scissors. I went downstairs and presented Dove's childish act to my parents. My father angrily summoned Dove, but my mother attempted to defend her, claiming Dove was in shock and unaware of her actions. Dad warned Mom to stay out of it. My father then confronted Dove, warning her to get her life in order, and stating he could no longer support her or tolerate her narcissism. This did not sit well with Dove, and she has detested me for it ever since. From that point on, I have been subjected to Dove's relentless animosity. While her hatred initially left me unperturbed, It became unbearable when she began making advances toward my boyfriend. So, after much deliberation and discussion with Atlas, I finally resolved to visit my parents with him. There was no point in concealing him from Dove, because no matter how diligently I tried, she would have eventually found a way to reach him. My friends advised me that it was better to assess the man now than to lose him later. Dove would only succeed in her malicious objective if Atlas succumbed. With considerable apprehension, I arrived at my parents' home with Atlas. I must tell you, she was practically throwing herself at him. He was exchanging greetings with my mother and father when Dove forcibly inserted herself for a hug. I don't know what led her to believe that Atlas would be captivated by her appearance. She had altered her look, dyeing her blonde hair black, and was fully dressed up with a new outfit, manicured nails and styled hair, as if Atlas were there on a date with her. She was aggressively interjecting herself into the conversation, and it was evident that everyone was ignoring her. At the dinner table, she quickly sat beside Atlas. When I asked her to move, stating I wished to sit there, she gave me an annoyed glance and relocated. She continuously questioned Atlas about his interests, and if he expressed a liking for something, she would claim to like it too, even if she didn't. Then she would elaborate on how compatible she and Atlas were, winking at me as if it were a joke, but it was clearly a cover-up. Atlas was visibly uncomfortable. He ignored her and redirected the conversation back to my father and mother. Her crude maneuver was simply too obvious. After dinner, I went to take a shower, leaving Atlas alone. Dove then entered, asking Atlas to call her number as she couldn't locate her phone. He did so. This was all a ploy to obtain his number. How sickening. He also informed me that while I was occupied with other matters, Dove attempted to elicit his sympathy by recounting her tragic tale of divorce and emotional distress, which supposedly took years for her to overcome. The amusing part was that my mother also joined her in complaining about Jeremy. After a while, Atlas asked me if I wanted to go for a walk, and if I could show him around the neighborhood. Before I could respond, my sister stood up and declared, "Sure." Atlas gave her a surprised look and stated he desired some alone time with me. Her face flushed with embarrassment, and she retreated to her room. It has only been a few days since that visit, and I anticipate of employing tactics to entice Atlas. Undoubtedly, I am apprehensive about it, but I also trust my partner and wish to observe how he handles her advances. Update 2. Hello everyone. I'm engaged. Atlas proposed to me last month during a trip. Yes, he knelt down with the ring, and I couldn't stop gushing about it. And yes, after my visit to my parents, Dove did attempt to manipulate Atlas. She texted him, inquiring about his well-being. Atlas is a cat lover, so Dove would inundate his inbox with adorable cat videos, despite never having any fondness for cats herself. Once she learned of Atlas's affection for felines, she acquired one and now records herself with it, sending the videos to Atlas. For the initial few weeks, Atlas would show me Dove's desperate greetings and solicitous messages, asking about his work. She pretended to be genuinely caring, but after a while he stopped informing me about her messages. I assumed she had given up on him and moved on. We also somewhat moved past the topic of her. After all, we clearly had more important things to focus on in life, given our demanding work schedules. One day, as I was browsing my social media, I noticed Dove had been added to Atlas's account, and she was liking and commenting on every one of his posts with those sweet, silly heart emojis. She had even commented on his old pictures and videos from the past 7 to 10 years. I didn't have a good feeling about it, and out of the blue I checked his phone. I saw Dove was still texting him occasionally, but her messages were unread and somewhat peculiar. She was clearly trying very hard to capture Atlas's attention. In the call logs there were missed calls, including one received around 3 a.m., and seeing that made me anxious. So, I confronted him about why he hadn't told me about Dove texting him. Atlas became flustered and said he was ignoring it, believing it was better if we didn't discuss her. I pressed him about the calls and he remained composed, then sat me down and explained that one day Dove called him when she was truly distressed. He became alarmed, thinking something was wrong, and then she began discussing some traumatic experiences related to Jeremy and needing someone to talk to. Atlas advised her to speak with her parents and stated that it was inappropriate to call so late. He told Dove she should have informed me first. That really affected me, and I told him that concealing this information was not sitting well with me, and I might lose my trust in him. He assured me that he would never fall for her schemes and that I had nothing to worry about. I have read hundreds of similar accounts where the husband has succumbed to such ploys despite trying diligently to avoid them, and I do not wish to make a fool of myself by trusting him blindly. I told him that whenever Dove calls him next, he needs to hand the phone over to me. I wanted to catch her red-handed in her malicious endeavor, and one day her call came through, and he woke me up in the middle of the night. I answered. She was silent when she heard my voice, and then she claimed it was a mistake and hung up. I called her the next day multiple times to warn her, but she never responded. I texted her from Atlas's phone, stating it was me and that she should not call or text Atlas unnecessarily at odd hours, and that if anything was urgent, she should call me and not him. She stopped texting him after that. I was finally relieved that she was out of our lives. After Atlas proposed to me, I sent a picture of the ring to my father. He must have shown it to my mother and Dove, and she resumed her stalking behavior. She again began texting him and sending absurd videos. I was utterly fed up with her. As soon as Atlas informed me, I called her and yelled at her, telling her to stop her tactics and get a life. She remained silent for most of the time while I unleashed all my suppressed anger, but I failed to realize that she was not going to give up. As soon as I hung up, I received a call from my mother, who was extremely angry, shouting at me for insulting my sister. My mother claimed that Dove had told her I was accusing her of trying to steal my fiancé. My mother said, "Your cruelty has given my daughter panic attacks. Can't you be a little more considerate towards your sister, who has been struggling with depression over these years, and is yet to recover from her traumatic divorce?" That was amusing because Dove was never depressed about her divorce anyway. I hung up the call and informed my father that if they continued to ignore Dove's behavior, I would sever ties with them. I could not continue to be a pawn in her game. I was done overlooking her actions. Update 3. I never imagined she would stoop to such depths. She had always made my life miserable, but I never thought she would attempt to seduce my fiancé before my wedding. I mean, all the bullying, body shaming, and mocking me were one thing, but it was a difficult truth to accept that she actually tried to seduce my fiancé and disrupt my wedding. So we were meticulously planning our wedding. I wasn't speaking to my mother after our last confrontation, but she called me and apologized for shouting at me. She explained that she was frightened to see Dove experiencing panic attacks, and therefore lost her composure earlier. One of my cousins had previously told me how Dove had been weeping over my happy life. She had been telling everyone how I was accusing her of trying to steal my fiancé, and how I was undeserving of everything I was receiving, my job and most importantly Atlas. According to Dove, since she is the beautiful one, she should receive the best of everything, not me. I informed my mother about this and she fell silent. She simply said, "Okay, you forget everything and focus on your wedding and your happy life ahead." Everything proceeded as planned. Dove had been keeping a low profile throughout this period. At least she didn't appear in our lives on the day of our wedding. We were at the venue, busy preparing for the momentous occasion. I received a call from Atlas's best friend, asking me to come to Atlas's room with my parents. I playfully teased him that Atlas couldn't see the bride before the wedding. He responded that it was something serious and needed to be addressed before the ceremony. My heart pounded, and I rushed to his room with my parents. Atlas was lying shirtless, drifting in and out of consciousness, while his groomsmen recounted Dove's cunning tactics. Atlas was getting ready in his room when Dove arrived with a drink. He refused to consume it, but Dove forced him to take a sip. Atlas took a sip and immediately realized the drink had been tampered with. He excused himself and went to the washroom. He called his friend, explained everything, and asked him to come over. By the time his friend rushed into the room, Atlas had partially lost consciousness and was out of the washroom. His friend shared the room with Atlas, so he had the access card. He swiftly activated his camera while discreetly entering the room. He heard Atlas shouting at Dove to leave him alone, while Dove was sitting on him, undressing herself and rubbing against him. This repulsive act was captured on camera. When she saw Atlas's friend, she pretended they were intimately involved and covered herself before exiting. She didn't realize she had already been recorded. She smirked at his friend and asked him not to disclose anything about this. When we arrived, Atlas was still lying there, partially unconscious. The drink was so potent that even a few sips left Atlas with severe dizziness and a headache. The drink was still present, with some solid particles settled at the bottom. It was an incredibly embarrassing moment for my parents, and they couldn't believe Dove would do something so appalling. My mother called her, asking her to come to Atlas's room. She arrived with smudged lipstick on her face. She said, "I know you guys are angry with me, but it was mutual. Atlas loves me, and he has been making advances on me ever since he met me, and today he convinced me for a one-time intimate encounter before the wedding." My mother slapped her hard, telling her that we knew the nonsense she was trying to pull, and that her actions had been recorded on camera. She was shocked to learn this. My parents escorted her out of the venue before she could create any further disturbance. Security was instructed not to allow her re-entry onto the premises. She deliberately wanted everyone to know that she was intimately involved with Atlas so that I would cancel the wedding. My father called a doctor, who confirmed that Atlas had been given a spiked drink, which affected his mental state. Atlas's parents and siblings were so incensed that they wanted to confront her. My parents had to apologize to them to calm them down. The wedding was postponed until Atlas recovered after several episodes of vomiting. This news quickly spread among the guests, providing them with juicy gossip for the next few days. When Atlas recovered, my father walked me down the aisle. I was overjoyed to see him as my husband, but I was equally stressed by everything that had transpired. Atlas added an extra point to his vows, that he would safeguard our relationship from all individuals who did not wish to see us together. After we returned from our honeymoon, my parents visited us and apologized to Atlas for all the trouble caused by Dove. My father assured us that Dove would be out of our lives. He had actually expelled her from the house and told her to live independently. I am still unable to fully process the incident. My wedding was moments away from being called off. If his friend hadn't recorded that, I would never have believed that Atlas was not involved.